Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone, and it's caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown! INDY!
A 43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole, throws it up, got it! Indiana's got their first lead of this contest.
It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hey, everybody. How are you today? It is January 3 of 2024. We are in the midst of the college football championship. Lots of basketball. Indiana back on the hardwood tonight. Some results from last night. On the docket, Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette will help us get caught up on all things that are going on between Indiana, Purdue, and Butler. Thad Matta got booted last night from a game. Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star joins us as Crispus Attucks, name from the past, pulls down the the Hall of Fame Classic up in Newcastle. Two upsets. They two upsets to win that. So congratulations to them. But we'll talk about that much more. The Colts, one game from the playoffs. Playoffs? You want to talk about playoffs? Hell yeah, because they're one game away. Win and they're in, baby. Mackenzie Mbako, Big Ten Freshman of the Week. And whatever else you have that you'd like to get off your mind. It's John Boy, I thought about that week in between.
The week between Christmas. Oh, yeah. I remember last week you were trying to decide the name that it should have, right?
I can't get off the Festivus thing, man.
I think it's perfect for that time of year. And I know
it
we're not
should be the week of
inventing.
Festivus.
It should be. Does Festivus have an actual day?
Yes. Oh, yeah. It's the day before Christmas Eve.
Well, we're unofficially moving it to the week between Christmas and New Year's.
That can still be the actual day of Festivus, but I like the week of Festivus because I still got a lot of problems with you people.
And it really is the perfect time of year.
You have probably never seen any of those episodes, have you?
Any Seinfeld? I've seen a few, but not enough to know every single reference from the show.
You've got to Google certain things, man. Festivus.
I mean, I know it's Seinfeld.
I understand that, but you have to see it. You have to feel it. You have to understand the conviction of which it comes from, baby.
I mean, it's a brilliant idea. For sure.
Well, it came from Frank Costanza. How could it not be? Father of George Costanza. Costanza. Hello, everybody. Welcome aboard. Appreciate you being with us on the program today. Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star will join us. And the Hall of Famer, Rick Bozich, as well. Looking forward to talking to Rick. So plenty to get to, talk about. How are you doing? What's up with your first week of the new year? Last night in college basketball action. Well, the new top 25 poll is out as well. Of course, Purdue still ranks at the top. I think they picked up a few more first place votes. Kansas number 2. Here's what I don't get. Kansas is number 2. How is Houston not number 2? How is UConn not number? I know that UConn has lost a couple games. I don't care. I go by what I've seen. And Houston is the top defensive team in the country. First of all, I don't care if you like Kelvin Sampson or not. I see none of that stuff goes into what I think about. I don't care. Houston might be the best team in college basketball right now. And I'll talk to Rick about that. Because no matter what sport you're talking, defense wins championships, baby. And it's not like that they can't put the ball in the hole. They're 13-0. They're the only major D1 program that is left with a goose egg next to the loss column. Save that for Ole Miss, where my daughter goes to school. How about Chris Beard has the Rebels at 13-0, but only 22nd in the country? You think there's a disparity in respect there? You've got Arizona, who's lost 3 times already, and they're still in the top 10. That's just voting on name. You cannot have lost 3 times already this season, as has Marquette. Well,
as
I know
has Tennessee. Tennessee's number 5 with 3 losses.
See, I don't get that. I'm not. You've got James Madison down there at number 19. I know their schedule's probably not the same. They're 13-0, but Ole Miss at 13-0. Come on, man. They're a Power 5 team. Not that I'm for or against. I just like to call out the disparity and talk about it. But Arizona kind of on a downward trend. But that's what it is. Purdue, Kansas, Houston, UConn, and Tennessee fills out your top 5. Kentucky, Marquette, North Carolina, Illinois, Arizona. There's your top 10. Followed by Oklahoma, BYU. Brigham Young University is number 12 in the country at 12-1. Do you know why they're number 12 in the country, John Boy?
I don't know why, but I've seen them play a couple times, and they look pretty
because good. They shoot the three-pointer like me, you, and I breathe oxygen. And they do it successfully. They have hit more three-pointers than anybody else in the country.
So what you're saying is Indiana needs to maybe watch a little film on BYU for some shooting lessons.
I'm not saying that, and I wasn't saying that, but now that the cat's out of the bag, you look down here at Providence, Ole Miss, a program that their coach has been there, 2 years? Is Chris Beard's second year at Ole Miss?
That's a good. I feel like this is his first year because last year was when he was at Texas and got let go in the middle of the season.
Was that last year? It was.
Yeah, because Rodney Terry was the interim head coach, and then this year is his first year as full-time head coach.
You got to be kidding me.
Yes.
So in his first full year as head coach, he has him at 13-0.
I can double check that for you, but I think that's correct.
I'm not doubting you. I'm saying that with a little bit of surprise.
Yeah, Chris Beard, undefeated at Ole Miss in his first season.
Boy, it sure makes you from a that would make fans kind of sit up a little bit and go, Things that make you go,
Yeah, people are going, especially because he got, I don't know if he got acquitted, but I know, the charges were dropped that he was accused of last year. And unless something new arises, I mean, he is going to be the most coveted coach for future openings this coming off season. And I don't think it'll be close. He'll be the guy that people want.
And again, I don't bring this stuff up because I'm talking about today. I bring it up because I love to have discussions. I love to have thought-provoking discussions. Let's say the IU job opened up today, which it's not. It's not going to open up tomorrow. But let's say that it did. There has never been a time that I think there are more valuable candidates for that job than there are right now. And I can think really quickly of 4, 5 that just jump to the top, and they don't have to go very far. Chris Beard, Michael Lewis, Dusty May, Keith Smart, and I can't even read my own writing. You got to be kidding me. I just wrote it down. I can't remember who the last one was that I wrote down. Oh, Calbert Chaney. How about those 5 for choices?
I've got to say the one thing, and I know we've talked about this with someone in the past, or maybe multiple.
And again, people, don't get jacked up. I'm not saying that this is something that this is just for thought provoking. This is just for thinking ahead.
Well, let me say, I would definitely, of that list of people, Calbert Chaney would 100% be at the bottom, because he is the only one who hasn't had any sort of head coaching experience. And yes, he's had valuable experience elsewhere, and he's currently under Mike Woodson on the staff, and that is valuable in and of itself. But I don't think Calbert Chaney would be on anybody's list of top candidates to be the next head coach of Indiana, were that to happen anytime soon.
We are in agreement on that. And then that leaves 2 names at the top for me. And then I don't know. I'm torn.
The easiest choice, and I know it's the only one that's not an Indiana alum, is Chris Beard. And it's because, I just looked at his record, not only at Ole Miss, but very similar to Kurt Cignetti. Everywhere that Chris Beard has been, he has won. He's never had a losing season in his entire career, and that dates back to 2012, 2013, when he was with the McMurray Warhawks in the NCAA.
Was that a wrestling thing?
It sounds like it could be. But anyway,
live this Friday night at the Convalescent Center, the NCAA Championship Wrestling comes to you. Yeah, I'd have to say of those names, Chris Beard, Dusty May would have to be on top, followed by Keith Smart and Michael Lewis. Keith Smart, I don't believe, has any head coaching experience.
Michael Lewis would be ahead of Keith Smart.
Keith Smart's been down underneath of coaching under Eric Musselman at Arkansas.
Michael Lewis is under Mick Cronin during their championship runner-up run, correct?
Touche. All righty. I'm going to give you that one then. So, but my point is, IU is going to have something it did not have the last time. And like I said, I'm not talking about today or tomorrow or next week or even this season. But these are names that I just don't think were around back then when Indiana went through this. They did not have that type of option.
Yeah, we're at the time of year. I know we got to get to a break, or not the time of year, but a time in college basketball where there are a lot of young names coming up in the game. A lot of the veterans are already beginning to retire. Obviously, you had Roy Williams a couple of years ago, Mike Krzyzewski, Tom Izzo won't be far behind, Jim Boeheim. There's many more that I'm probably not even thinking of. but the legends of college basketball's past. I mean, we're entering a new era of elite coaches. A lot of them aren't elite yet, but they will be in the years to come.
Pete says, evil Caitlin Clark does it again. 3 at the buzzer to beat MSU. At least it wasn't IU this time. You know what? I'm coming around on Caitlin Clark. She's a badass. You know what? Stop me. If I was as good as she is, I would probably give you the Eli Manning, which if you don't know what that is, then I'm not going to explain it to you. You'll have to have been a fan of it. But the Eli Manning, the double bird, she is what she is. Stop me. You know, if I'm her, but hey, we're late for a break. Got to get there so we can get Dylan Sinn on from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette and continue these conversations. Appreciate you being with us. Indiana Sports Beat Radio, powered by Andy Moore Honda here on this Wednesday. We're back with lots more coming up right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the Good day, Dylan Sinn.
Good morning. How are you guys?
Hey, Dylan.
Oh, there we go. Good.
We are wonderful.
All right. I'll be right back.
All right. Okay.
Let's see.
Were you guys on yesterday?
Yes.
Yes.
Was everybody else off?
Welcome back. No, I was just curious how much. No, I was just curious how much you guys talked about the football games.
Never enough.
Yeah.
They were awesome. With
they were great.
One exception, Michigan won. Other than that, gosh dang it.
That was the correct outcome. That was the correct outcome. They deserve. They were the better team. They deserved to win.
I just want to see Michael
the
Penix
SEC can quiet down for 5 minutes.
DeBoer put the big old mouse trap down on Jim Harbaugh in Michigan. That would be incredible. I sent out, which I think you might, I don't know if you saw it or not, but the night of the game, I sent out a couple of quick tweets that, first of all, Michael Penix can become the first quarterback to ever beat Jim Harbaugh and Michigan at 2 different schools, having had beat them at IU in 2020, 38-21. And he is also going against his former backup in Jack Tuttle, who was Michigan's number 2 quarterback.
Yeah. And A.J. Barner's up at Michigan.
A.J. Barner. So for those of you that think that you can't get high-level talent to Indiana, you're wrong. They've had it.
They had high-level talent.
I mean,
they had their
it was
best.
just simply mismanaged.
I believe Barner was a part of that class. That was the best class in IU history a couple of years ago. I could be wrong, but I feel like he was in that class.
Yeah. There was the guy that made basically the play of the game on the final play, Josiah Stewart, the defensive end for Michigan, who caved in Alabama's right tackle, just shoved him straight into the backfield.
Oh, man. But see,
to stop
I hate
Milrow
those.
on the final play. He was a transfer.
I hated that call, though.
10 seconds.
I hated that call.
These dudes can play. Those dudes can play.
Your butcher, baker, and fish house. No matter where you live.
Well, the play was
This
blocked
segment
at
is
the best.
brought to you by the Chop Shop, home of the Indiana football and men's basketball coaches shows. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, welcome back. Beautiful, beautiful people. It is a good-looking day outside, as long as you don't step toes out there, I think. Sun shining, clear blue sky, but temperature says otherwise. And I'm sure where my buddy Dylan Sinn is, Mercury's a little deeper up there in Fort Wayne. And shout out to everybody, all of our peeps listening on Fort Wayne's only sports station, 1380 The Fan. Keep it tuned right there because you can catch Caleb and Kenny each morning, and immediately following Indiana Sports Beat Radio, the Sports Rush is right there. Also, our fine peeps down on the river on ESPN, the Ref 97.7, always the right call in Evansville, and up in the region, the voice of the region, 12:30 a.m., 104.7 FM, WJOB. Welcome in, Dylan Sinn. Dylan, how are you, man?
Good morning. Good morning, Jim. Thanks for having me on, as always.
Hey, man, it's always a pleasure. This weekend was really fun from a sports standpoint. There were some good basketball games, but the bowl games sucked. Well, that's two things we can talk about. Bowl games and the playoffs. The bowl games just sucked. Opt-outs, and I know you've got all these coaches saying that, hey, we've got to change this, that this opt-out, this and complaining, yada, yada. What the hell do you think it's like for the fans? But it's an easy change. Obviously, those that had nothing to play for, they weren't there. They didn't have the teams. So the first thing I think is going to have to happen going forward is, especially in these bigger events, if it's not a playoff game, that any non-playoff major bowl, I think is the players are going to have to be paid going forward, Dylan. I think that's the only way of keeping any interest in a non-playoff football game going forward is you're going to have to pay these players.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. I don't even know if that's going to work because the reason these guys are opting out is not. I mean, I'm sure a lot of them would love to play. They're football players; they want to play, but they saw Jalen Smith, right? That's what it is. They saw what happened to Jalen Smith, and they saw what happened to Jake.
Is that who played for first play of the game? Who was it? Texas A&M? Oh
no, it was Notre Dame from Fort Wayne guy. And he was going to be a top 5 pick in the draft. He gets hurt in the bowl game against Ohio State, suffers a knee injury, and slips from the top 5 to the second round. And that cost him millions. Well, insurance. Yeah, but a lot of these guys aren't good enough to have insurance. They're undrafted free agents, or like
if you're a top 5 pick, you are.
No, I know, but if you're a top 5 pick, but a lot of these guys are hoping to be a 6th round pick, right? And they don't want to slip from being a 6th round pick to being an undrafted free agent. So the question is, how do you make the bowl games matter in so much that they want to play? And one theory that I've heard that it's very out there, but one way that I've heard that you could kind of fix this is you move these games to the beginning of the next season, make them kind of the first game of the next season for these guys. Make a marquee non-conference game instead of like an exhibition at the end of the year. Because at least then you have a team, you had a full offseason to go through. It starts the next season. Everyone's going to play. You get a matchup between teams that don't often play each other, which is the point of the bowls, right? The team gets to take a trip. And that's one way I've heard to fix it, but it's just really hard because even if you pay these guys some portion of the gate, it's for a lot of them, it's still not going to be worth it, which stinks. But they say it's a business decision, and they're absolutely right. They've seen what happens when these guys get hurt, and the difference between being a 5th round pick and being undrafted is huge for a lot of these guys. So it's tough because I think you're right. I think they should be paid. I think you can at least try it, but I don't even think that would work for a lot of these guys.
Well, the thing that jumps out is you look at all these coaching contracts, and every one of them has a clause. James Franklin? He made $500,000 just by being the coach
Yeah.
January 1st.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, it's January 1st. How
Yeah.
about a check for $500,000?
Retention
Sure, why
clause,
not?
baby. Retention
Sure,
clause.
why not? If I have to, I'll take it. Okay, I will. Another $250,000 for making a bowl game, a New Year's Day bowl game. That's $750,000 just for showing up on January 1st, baby.
Oh, yeah.
So there's money.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's
split around.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that is the way it works, right? Is that these coaches' agents have worked overtime for them for years, right? Like James Franklin, for the last 3 years in a row before this offseason, every offseason it was like, oh, is James Franklin going to take that high-profile job? Remember, he was thinking about taking the USC job a couple of years ago when that came open. Like it was every year, it was coaching carousel for James Franklin. That's how he got extensions out of these guys. But these guys' agents work overtime for them, and now players are finally getting some of that opportunity. Not entirely, but they can have at least people advocating on their behalf. So we'll start to see some of that. I just don't know because the money in the NFL is just so big that I do wonder whether even paying them a couple $100,000 for a bowl game would be enough. And most of these bowl games don't have $100,000 to give to each player. Is the thing. These smaller ones, they're not even going to be able to pay that. They barely cover expenses, half of these, and most of them are owned by ESPN anyway. So we'll see.
A 12-team playoff results in 7 games.
11 games. 11 games.
It's 11? Oh, it's 11?
Yeah.
Beautiful. Because I was trying to do the math on 7. I'm like, that's not working out, man.
No, basically the way it works for any tournament is you need 1 game to eliminate each team. So NCAA tournament, 68 teams, that's 67 games. So it's 12
that
games.
Changes the whole ball of wax right there. Now I'm in. If you've got 11, because there are only, there's not 11 major bowl games right now. Would you take the playoffs and all that stuff out? There's not a May 11. So we're going to be better off. We're actually getting a little bit more juice for our money, I think.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that was one of the main reasons to be excited about playoff expansion was like, look, there's going to be more high-level football games played at the end of the year with teams of full strength. That's exciting. Like it's going to be exciting to see more of these teams play late in the season. And especially with the some of the games being on campus, like those first round games, 4 of those games are going to be on campus. That's going to be so much fun to have like a playoff level atmosphere at an Ohio stadium or down in Tuscaloosa or somewhere even up north in Seattle, right? It's going to be a lot of fun, and I think that's one of the main reasons to be excited about a 12-team playoff. Is that it just gives you more high-level football. If you're a fan of football, you should be excited about this. And there are a lot of people like, oh, well, those teams aren't going to have a chance to win. Yeah, but we don't care about the St. Peter's didn't have a chance to win the national championship 2 years ago, but we still enjoyed them making a run to the Elite Eight. That was still fun, right? Like Tulane last year, they beat USC in the Cotton Bowl. They could have then beaten Penn State in a quarterfinal. Suddenly, Tulane's in the Final Four. How fun is that? They're not going to win the championship, but that's a blast, right? Yeah, it's the same thing as basketball.
Now, it's not the difference between basketball and football is, in basketball, we get I'd have to what's the number on games you get out of the NCAA tournament?
67 because there's 68 teams.
Right, because they got that funky
the first 4.
The stupidest thing in the history of the planet Earth. You're in. You're not a play-in. You're in. It's like everything else. If you lose, you're out. Jeez. But I hate the play-in crap. Anyway. So, you're getting 67 potentials of an upset.
Yeah.
Which is always a potential in the NCAA men's basketball. That potential is going to be a lot less in football, and you were only going to have 11 shots at that. But we're not talking apples and oranges here, but 11 big games, that's going to be fun. That is going to be fun. You're going to have an upset here or there. That is going to be fun. What about the rest of the? I said this yesterday, I think it was. Do we really need the bad boy mowers, Pop-Tarts, hot jacuzzi, such and Wheaties bowl game anymore?
The world needs the Pop-Tarts bowl, Jim. Everyone needs the Pop-Tarts bowl.
Well, all right, John. Well, I'll let you keep the Pop-Tarts bowl, but what about the rest of these bad boy Gasparilla cherries? I mean, we don't need them.
Yeah, I mean it's fun for the teams that make it, right? Like if you go 7-5,
but those teams are not going. You're having all these opt-outs, and it's BS. It's like it's a crap game. Florida State, Georgia, that was a snoozer.
Yeah, I mean, look, if IU makes a bowl game this year, IU's fan base is going to be thrilled to go play in that bowl game, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. There are a lot of teams that have a bunch of opt-outs, but it's not all of them, especially some of the smaller teams. Like I don't know, I watched Miami, Ohio play in a bowl game this year. They were mostly intact because a lot of them are running it back next year. But like for a lot of these teams that don't always go to a bowl game or capping off a really special season, those bowl games matter to those teams. Like Tennessee, Iowa, that game stunk because there was a lot of opt-outs for Tennessee and Iowa. Same with LSU, Wisconsin. There was a ton of opt-outs, but it's also an opportunity for fans to see the next year's team, right? I cover Notre Dame. Notre Dame didn't have as many opt-outs as some other teams, but Notre Dame had a fair amount of opt-outs. But they went and played in a bowl game in El Paso, Texas. Notre Dame fans packed the place; it was sold out, and we got Notre Dame fans got to see Steve Angeli play quarterback. They got to see the new running backs after Audric Estime opted out, and Notre Dame went and beat down Oregon State. It was a lot of fun for Notre Dame fans. And that's Notre Dame. Like, that's a huge brand, and these fans were excited. So there's still a lot to recommend to these games. More football is good. I like football. I like watching football. The games aren't as high level as some of the ones during the regular season because the teams aren't at full strength, but football's football. It's December.
Football is football, baby. We've got a lot more to get to. Indiana is at Nebraska tonight. Basketball as well on the hard court, and we'll talk about that and lots more as Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette with me, back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're looking for a home.
Sorry for booting you at the beginning of that segment, Dylan. I don't think you realized, but you were like 3 or 4 seconds lagging.
I mean, there was nothing I could do about it. Yeah, it was just waiting.
I was just like, I guess I just got to remove him, and hopefully he either rejoins or he'll see me tell him to rejoin.
Yeah, no, I figured that's what happened, but I wasn't I wasn't lagging on purpose. I was hoping my computer would catch up.
Yeah. I was just like, man, something's acting really weird. I'm gonna try to fix this.
This is the best point. The coaches probably want these bowl games more than anybody because they get an entire month of extra practice.
That's the biggest incentive in general.
Forget the game.
Absolutely.
Forget the game. The game doesn't even matter. It's the freaking practice that they get.
Yeah. And they get the extra practices as they get reps for guys who have not gotten reps the entire season because they were stuck behind other guys. You get to see the next year's team.
They were 5-7, Jen. That's why they went 5-7.
How the flip did they get to a bowl game at 5-7?
That's happened many times before.
Well, because
and that means we've got too many bowl games.
Well, yeah,
they still, Dylan. Do they still decide which 5-7 teams go based on academic scores, or is it based on something else now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, it's based on the APR. So you get it's like 3 5-7 teams made it this year, something like that.
How'd you feel watching that playoff game? By the way, I know you're a Michigan fan.
Man, it was intense. I thought it was over toward the end. I didn't think they had it in them to go down and go 75 yards. I didn't think they had it in them.
I was in agreement with you. I thought once Alabama
I was thrilled.
took the lead.
Yeah. I thought that was it. It's the greatest. I've only been a fan for 30 years, but it was the greatest drive in Michigan history, in my opinion. 75 yards to tie the game and then go win it in overtime.
Roman Wilson
they paved him.
Yeah, and Blake Corum in general, I guess, was really good. Are you still?
That's a legacy
starting
game.
to lag behind again. Are you?
I can hear you. Okay.
Okay, I think you're fine. For some reason, I thought you might have fallen behind again.
But no, it's a legacy game for Blake Corum. Legacy game for Blake Corum.
Yeah.
Just he hadn't looked right basically the entire year. He was not nearly as good as he was last year. He just didn't look right, and he was at 100% in that game, and he was awesome, just awesome.
Oh yeah. All right, Jim. We got just a few seconds. Here we go, guys.
That jump cut that he made, boy.
All right, here we go.
On the Ridgeline. Go to AndyMooreHonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by Remax Advanced Realty, Indie Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back. It's Wednesday, January number 3 of 2024. Thanks a lot for being with us here at the Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Of course, Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette with us, talking about all kinds of things. Trying to get to college basketball. There's so much football to talk about. If Michigan wins this thing, Dylan, you know there's just always going to be this gigantic asterisk next to their name.
Nope.
Baloney.
Nope.
How can you say that? Their coach has been suspended for half the season because of cheating.
Nope.
Not one, but two different cheating things.
That's the thing. Everyone talked about how soft their schedule was the entire season. They played all their games. All the games that mattered came after all this stuff came out. They have done this all without any cheating whatsoever.
Well,
that was the thing. That was the thing. Is everyone, they could have waited until after the season to bring this up, and it would have been like, oh, Michigan cheated to win a championship. But now, Connor Stallions hasn't been there since they played Indiana. It's been they beat Penn State without him. They beat Ohio State without him. They beat Alabama without him. No asterisk. I mean, I'm sure some people will put it on there. Ohio State fans will put it on there, but that's what can you do? They earned it.
I've got a question for you. If Michigan wins the national championship,
yeah,
does Connor Stallions get a ring?
Probably. he was a coach for the team for half the year. You know, maybe get him one of the smaller ones.
I wouldn't call him a coach. I think more of a videographer, coordinator.
Sure, he's an analyst. That's his job. But no, I mean
reconnaissance.
He's one of those guys, like he's like a baseball player who gets traded at the deadline, but like they give him a half World Series share anyway because he was so important to the team's success at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, but unless those guys were wearing the buzzer for the pitching count coming in or something, a little bit different.
Yeah.
So there's that.
He was at the Rose Bowl. I thought that was funny. He was at the Rose Bowl.
He was at the Rose Bowl.
He bought a ticket.
Well, of course he did. He probably had one on each sideline.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh man, I could go all day with that. College basketball, Purdue reigning at the top of the world right now, still with that number one ranking and showing no signs of slowing down at the moment.
No, they were fantastic last night against Maryland. I was really impressed by Maryland last night. I thought they improved significantly since they played Indiana. I thought they were terrible. When they played Indiana, they were just awful. It was hard to watch. But when they played Purdue, and it's crazy because Purdue won that game easily, and the game was never in doubt. But I actually thought Maryland played really well, which is kind of crazy. That is a compliment to Purdue. Maryland's defensive intensity was really, really good the entire game. They made Purdue work for everything it got, but Purdue's ball movement was just so good that it didn't matter. Zach Edey was really good again. And that's the thing. Purdue just has a little bit more edge this year than it did last year. I think that's part of it, is that Maryland came into that game thinking that basically they punked Purdue last year. When Purdue went to Maryland last season, they just punked them. It was like a 29-5 run in the second half of that game. They kind of just shut them down. And I think they thought they were going to be able to do it again. And Purdue just came out from the tip and made sure that didn't happen. And I do think, and I'm on record saying this, I think Lance Jones is a huge part of that. I think he's kind of a missing piece for Purdue this year. He brings just a little extra confidence, a little extra kick to that team when it really needs it. He made those 3 threes at the beginning of the second half that really kind of stretched the lead out to 20, 22 points and put the game away. And I'm a fan of everything that he does. He's a fantastic on-ball defender. Held Jameer Young down for the most part, even though Jameer Young hit 26, because Jameer Young is awesome. And so, yeah, I'm really impressed by Purdue going on the road in a tough environment and really not even playing with its food, just getting in and getting out with a pretty easy win.
Yeah, it's going to be a special night and a special place, a bad night for Purdue and a great night for another team right now to see who is going to be able to knock the Boilers off, because Zach Edey's not really going to have a bad game. It's kind of hard for him to have a bad game. He just turns around and scores.
Right. And that's how good he is, right? Like, it's the only way you're going to stop Purdue is if you totally stop them from getting the ball inside at all. Like, that's the one thing that Zach Edey can't do, is he's not Malik Renew. He can't get the ball on the perimeter and get himself his own post up. You have to feed the ball inside to him. And that's the one thing that he doesn't have in his game. And so if you can stop the ball from going inside, you can make Purdue a little bit one-dimensional, force them to hit those mid-range numbers. But even now, they have a weapon they didn't have last year, which is they have Braden Smith going around those screens, and you can get him going downhill, and that helps too. And that's something they didn't really have nearly as much last year. So it's much harder. I do think what you're saying, we've already seen it. Like the team that has a great game while Purdue struggles. We saw that against Northwestern. Northwestern was able to do that. Purdue went into a buzzsaw in that game with Boo Buie just going absolutely insane. It's going to take your best guard having the night of his life to beat Purdue. And it could happen. Boo Buie already did it. We saw that. But it is going to take your best guard having for Indiana to beat Purdue, Trey Galloway, or if Xavier Johnson's back, Xavier Johnson is going to have to go for 25. That's just how it's going to work to win these games. You are not going to win against Purdue in the paint. You're just not. So
no,
that's how
you can only hope to match.
Yeah, exactly.
And not only do you have to have a good day from the perimeter yourself, you have to shut theirs down.
Yeah, and you're going to need to be letter perfect in your screens, because Purdue moves the ball so well. You need to be perfect in rotation. You need to be perfect on your switches. When Braden Smith goes over those screens, you have to chase him and chase him and chase him. You need to make sure that he doesn't have space for that 15-foot pull-up that he gets to, because he's able to get to it anytime he wants. He's knocking it down at a rate that basically is among the best in the entire country. He comes around that screen and gets to that 15 to 17-foot pull-up. It's automatic. It goes in. So you need to follow him around and not let him get that shot off. And it is huge work for any opposing guard. So I'm looking ahead. It's 2 weeks from now that Purdue and IU play in Bloomington. Trey Galloway is going to need to have the game of his life offensively and probably defensively, chasing those guys around. If Gabe Cupps is playing at that time, he's going to need to chase Braden Smith around those screens over and over and over again and play the game of his life defensively. And that's just to get a shot to win, right? Because then it's going to be close, and you still have to go make the plays necessary to win it.
Well, tonight Indiana is at Nebraska before we get to that point. So Indiana getting back to Big Ten play, a road game in Lincoln, and a game that while is not expected to be easy, it's a game that Indiana is expected and needs to win.
Expected to win seems strong. Nebraska is favored by 6 points in this game.
Well, when I say expected to win, if you're an Indiana fan, you have to expect them to win this game, because if they don't, if you can't win at Nebraska, you're not going to be favored to win at Ohio State. You're not going to be favored to win at Illinois. You're not going to be favored to win at Northwestern. You're not going to be favored to win at Iowa. So at Purdue, there's a lot of wins that are just going by the wayside. You have to pick up some wins on the road.
Well, to be fair, I want to point this out. I think someone pointed this out yesterday. According to Ken Pom, Indiana is only projected to win one game in the month of January.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's because Ken Pom values Indiana incredibly low right now because Indiana has not blown out bad teams. That the metrics all have Indiana much lower than other teams because they haven't blown out the bad teams. But they've won. Indiana is 25 spots below Michigan in Ken Pom right now, even though Michigan is 6-7, Indiana is 10-3, and Indiana beat Michigan on the road. The metrics are not. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe Indiana is just going to get creamed this Big Ten season. But so far this season, outside of the Auburn game, Indiana has played to the level of its competition almost every single game. Even the UConn game, that game was close into the second half until Malik Renew got in foul trouble and had to leave, and UConn opened it up. Every other game outside of the Auburn game, Indiana has played to the level of its competition. They played up to it, and they played down to it. And so I think we're going to see Indiana I don't know if they'll beat Nebraska. They might lose. Nebraska. I don't know how many people have realized this outside of Nebraska yet. Nebraska is one of the best teams in the Big Ten. I would put them about 5th right now. So they could well lose tonight. It's going to be a very tough game, especially if Khalil Ware is not able to go because he's still sick. But they could lose tonight. I don't think Ken Pom has it. It's probably a 7 or 8 point game. I don't think the Indiana gets blown out. And I do think that they do better than 1-7 in this upcoming stretch of games, because what the team that Ken Pom is projecting to go 1-7 in these next 8 games is the team that almost lost to Morehead State because they didn't have any energy, right? That's not the team Indiana has been when they play major conference opponents. It just isn't. Again, Auburn is what Auburn is, but Indiana was up by 12 in the first 5 minutes of that game. So it's not even that game. It's not like they didn't show up. It was the whole substitution thing in the middle of the first half. I do think that Indiana has found an extra gear when it's had to this year. I mean, even in those games that Ken Pom is underrating IU for, every time IU is needed to find an extra gear to win a game, they've done it. And except against Kansas when at the end of the game they just ran out of gas. But in these other games against low major teams, there's been a moment every game where Indiana just realizes, hey, we got to go get it done. And they've gone and gotten it done every single time. And that matters. They seem to have this kind of switch on that team where they know when it's time to play. And I do think that they're going to go to Nebraska tonight and they're going to know it's time to play. And they might lose anyway because Nebraska's a good team and they're playing at home. But I don't think that Indiana is the huge underdog that they're being made out to be here.
No, I don't either. And especially the way they have played here of late. Now, can they do that on the road? Specifically their shooting, which has picked up dramatically. Outside shooting has been tremendously better. And something that they're going to have to continue. If you're going to win a game like this on the road, you have to do things like that. But also Nebraska does not have the talent to deal with both Malik Renew and Khalil Ware. And if you get, then there's the potential of having Xavier Johnson back tonight as well.
Yeah. I'm interested to see if Xavier Johnson's not back, right? How many minutes go to Anthony Leal in this game? I'm really interested to see that because obviously I don't think Anthony Leal is going to start, obviously. But I do think they found something in that game against Kennesaw State. They found something with the kind of the 5-out defense they were playing where you switched everything. I think that was a really effective kind of wrinkle that they threw at Kennesaw State. It changed the game. I do wonder whether they go to that a little bit more in this game if Nebraska is raining 3-pointers, because Nebraska shoots like Kennesaw State, Nebraska shoots a ton of threes. They don't make a ton of them. They're only like 32.5%, somewhere in there. But they take like 27 a game. So it might be a similar game plan for Indiana this game, is that if you're going to try to switch a lot on the perimeter, because Nebraska is going to run a lot of ball screen action stuff at you. They're going to run a lot of different things to try to get you in rotations and get those open threes. That's kind of the way they play, because they don't have a huge interior presence. That's the other part of this, is that Nebraska's best interior player, Rink Mast, the transfer from Bradley, he's missed the last 2 games. He had knee surgery, kind of minor cleanup knee surgery. And Fred Hoiberg said he's a game time decision for this game. Now he's your best interior player. If he can't go, then Nebraska has to rely almost entirely on the perimeter. So I'm interested to see how Indiana, if that's the case, how Indiana handles that. I think if Xavier Johnson is not ready to go for this game, I think Anthony Leal could get 10, 15 minutes in this one.
Well, he certainly has been showing his worth here of late, and just playing hard, being in the right places at the right times. And in essence, by doing that, giving, like you said, some valuable minutes to Indiana, minutes that they needed.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. Like, I know how much people like Gabe Cupps, and I do think he'll be a good player, but there have been times where he's been outmatched defensively this year. Like he got beat off the dribble a fair amount by Kennesaw State. He couldn't keep his guy out of the paint. And as soon as Anthony Leal got in the game, they were able to kind of close down some of those driving lanes. And again, I think Gabe Cupps will be a very good player for Indiana. I don't think he's a very good player or even a good player right now. I think he's kind of swimming right now. He's working
treading water,
being
treading water.
Exactly. And I think Anthony Leal just feels a little bit more comfortable out there because he's a senior and he's done this. Like, even though he hasn't played in a ton of games, he knows where to be on defense and he knows what he's supposed to be doing. And for as good as Gabe Cupps' instincts are, there's still that level of experience that just help that there's an extra level there where Anthony Leal just kind of knows that's where I'm supposed to be. I need to get there now. And I think that matters.
How has Indiana ever been an underdog at Nebraska in basketball?
Boy, I don't know off the top of my head. I know, I mean, Indiana's won 7 in a row against Nebraska. So even if they have been, there's they've gone out and won. So we'll see. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised they were in at least once in the twilight of the Archie era. But yeah, Nebraska's good. Nebraska's good. They're 11-2. If you guys, Kaisei Tominaga is one of the most exciting players in the entire country. That dude is just so fun to watch. And they play really entertaining brand of basketball. So.
What is up next for you, sir?
Yeah, I will be obviously watching the game tonight, and then I'll be covering both games this weekend. I'll be at Purdue, Illinois on Friday, which should be a ton of fun, top 10 matchup, and then IU Ohio State on Saturday. So looking forward to those.
Yeah, the Purdue Illinois game takes a little luster off of that. Of course, no Terrence Shannon for Illinois. That was going to be a battle, but Illinois is still looking pretty good even without him.
They beat Northwestern by 30 last night without him. Like, they played the best game I've seen them play all year against Northwestern.
Actually, and they've won 2 games in a row without him. Without question, both of those games, they were. I'm like, whoa, what?
Yeah.
So it might have worked to galvanize that team.
Yeah. So and then they now they go into Mackey Arena, which is it's the toughest place to play in the Big Ten this year. You go escape with a win, like make a statement win early in the year and say, hey, we're going to be in this Big Ten race. It's not going to be just a Purdue coronation the entire year. Let's go see if we can get one on the road.
Absolutely. Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely, Jim. Thanks for having me on.
You betcha. Appreciate you as always. Hey, we've got lots more coming up in the next hour. Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star and Rick Bozich, the Hall of Famer, joins us. And we'll back with that and much more right after this break.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market.
Thank you, Dylan.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you, guys.
Appreciate you, brother.
Jim, will I see you Saturday?
Yes, sir.
All right, then. Got to get one this week. That's how you get one of these two. If you're IU, I think you feel okay if you get one of two.
That's fair.
Yeah. All right, gentlemen.
Adios,
I will see you guys later. Have a good one.
What?
You don't even know. Oh, wow. Kyle's up next, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, Babaruski.
I'll reach out to Kyle if he's not in by the time we get rolling. We got about 30 seconds.
All right, and have those Michael Penix clips.
They're all, yeah, I've got them. I've had them up since the beginning of the show. They're there.
Give it, Bob.
All right, I'll go ahead and bring us back. Here we go.
Of course, contact Amy Rhoda with Revesco Real Estate for additional information. 812-583-0919 or go to mystonecrestliving.com. That's mystonecrestliving.com for more details. This segment is brought to you by Hoosier Hanks East. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coy, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday. Thanks a lot for being with us. Cal Neddenriep expected to be with us but that reminds me, tonight's game is a 9 p.m. tip. That means no post-game show tonight, but I'm going to try to get Todd Leary on tomorrow during the show, and we'll recap tonight's action then with him. So looking forward to that. But you can still go watch the game at Hoosier Hanks East. They'll have all the specials for you, ready to lay it out. Man, looking forward to talking to Kyle today because big win by Crispus Attucks over the weekend. Two big wins, actually, as they went up to Newcastle and won the Hall of Fame Classic as the underdog. Well, not really. They're number 6, so it's not like I don't know if either of these were upsets, to be honest with you. They knock off Flory Badunga and Kokomo 69-59. Then they beat number 11 Brownstown. Now, Brownstown was without Jack Benner, but Crispus Attucks rolls to the championship, man, 76-51. They got a couple of good players in Mason Lewis and Desmond Briscoe, big 6'8". I think he's a sophomore, maybe.
A lot of talent in that deal. You had Flory Badunga for Kokomo. You had Jack Benner for Brownstown and Mason Lewis, Desmond Briscoe. There's a lot of, there we go. Kyle joining us now. Hey, Kyle, how are you, sir?
Good. How you doing, Jim?
Good. I was just talking about the big weekend for Crispus Attucks, man. That's a gigantic win for them, although it was not really an upset. If you go into a weekend and you beat Kokomo and Brownstown Central, that's a good weekend.
Yeah, it was unfortunate Jack Benner wasn't playing, but yeah, still, the Kokomo game felt like a heavyweight matchup. It really was, and Kokomo, I thought, played well. I mean, it wasn't like they didn't play well. Briscoe rose to the occasion against Badunga, and it was a really good game. I mean, it was kind of a battle back and forth. Attucks just has better guards. That's kind of what it comes down to, is they just have more guards, better guards, more polished guards. And, as good as Flory is, he needs a little bit more help. And they, they're still going to be a top contender. They're going to be, one of the best teams in 4A. But I think, Attucks kind of showed like, hey, we're here. This sectional 10 is not just going to be, Lawrence North or Cathedral. I mean, Attucks definitely is in that stratosphere of teams, as we saw. So if they can get consistently, production out of Briscoe like that, I mean, they're going to be a handful for anybody in that sectional 10, which I can't remember where that's played at this year, but that's always a great, great event. And I think sectional 10 looks as, about as strong as it ever has been, top to bottom.
I forget what I was going to say. Daggone. Oh, is Briscoe a sophomore?
Junior.
He's a junior. Okay.
Yeah.
Man, a lot of talent coming up. And how was the action between him and Badunga? I know that without having someone mentioned he doesn't have the supporting cast that he had last year, so he's going to face a lot more defense around him. But how was the battle between those two?
Well, Briscoe came out and landed the first. He had a 3-pointer kind of right out of the gate. He, he blocked a couple shots. I think his line ended up 14-8 and maybe 4 block shots, somewhere in that neighborhood. But he came out right away and kind of landed the first blow. And Flory ended up, having a good game still. It wasn't like he was not a factor, but it's crazy. Like social media, it's such a cesspool sometimes. Of not saying all of it is or anything close, really. I mean, it's a good thing for the most part, but some people just, always just hating on Flory for whatever reason. But man, it's hard when you're not a guard who has the ball in your hands. He can't feed the ball to himself, and it's hard, it's when you're playing a really good team like Attucks, it's not as easy as people make it out to be, where, they're saying, well, he needs to touch the ball every possession. And that's a valid, argument, but just not going to happen, and I think sometimes our nostalgic memories are like, we think players from the past dominated every single game. It's just not true. So anyway, what I'm saying is I think Flory played fine, and he went out against Brownsburg later and really played okay, played really well, but they do have a good team. I will say, I think their guard play is not terrible. They have Zion Bellamy, who's a junior who can knock down shots. They have Reese Beard, who's a really good player at the guard spot. He played quarterback for them. They have Carson Rogers, who's not a guard, but he's kind of an inside guy with Flory. So they have kind of he's about 6'6", so they got 2 guys in there that makes them really tough. And they got another guy coming off the bench who's almost as good as Rogers. So they've got, it's not like they don't have talent at the guard spots. They have some good players. They just don't knock down 3-pointers consistently, which that allows teams to pack it in on you a lot. So it does make it difficult, especially when you've got talent like Attucks does. So, Flory played fine. I mean, I would say he played, he gave people definitely a lot of, reason to think he'll be Mr. Basketball. I would say that. And honestly, I wrote this the other day, or I may have just posted it on Twitter, but it's like, you watch him, I've watched him many times now over the years, and it's amazing to me how much he gets beat on and fouled hard, and he'll dunk on somebody and just kind of, I noticed the other night, he dunked on somebody, got fouled, and just tucks his jersey in and walks to the free throw line. He doesn't, get in their face, or, when he gets fouled hard, he doesn't react. He just goes on. He'll just smile. Some kid tapped him on the head while, dunked on him, tapped him on the head while doing it. He didn't react to that. That this was earlier in the season. But he just doesn't, he just goes about his business, and there's a lot to be said for that, for a guy who's getting, constantly fouled and stuff like that. So credit to him. He just does his job. So anyway, I kind of got off on a tangent there, but long way to see.
When you're at the top, baby, the only place people can take you is down.
Absolutely. And I get that. That's kind of the way it is, and maybe he doesn't care about any of that, but I will commend him. I think he just, I think he just does what he's supposed to do, and people complain about everything under the sun, but that fact, I think, it really has endeared him to Kokomo people. I think that's one thing that, you talk to people in the gym that I know from Kokomo, and they have nothing bad to say about Flory, which, even not even talking about on the record, just kind of in conversation. So that tells you a lot, I think, about the person he is and the way he goes about things.
We're a good portion of the way into the high school season. Who are the best couple of teams in the state right now?
I was, Fishers. I saw them a couple times over the break. They hosted a holiday tournament. It was fun chance for me to see some different teams too. And I saw Portage. Portage came in and played them in the semifinal of their tournament. They were only down by 2 points going into the fourth quarter. And you might think, well, who's, Portage, who are, why are they, they are a good team, it was fun to see them play. I thought, Fishers handled them in the fourth quarter, ended up winning by, I think, 17. It was definitely a much closer game than that. And then Fishers went on to beat Chesterton in the final. Again, that was a 5-point game at halftime. They won by 32. So Fishers can really turn it on. They have a lot of pieces. They press you. They don't have a lot of big weakness, I would say. I would be curious to see them like against, if there's a rematch with Kokomo, because they handled Kokomo the first time, but, if they played them again, what that game would look like, or, just their sectional, I think will be a tough challenge too, although they'll play a lot of those teams in the season. So we'll get an idea, but, I don't see a lot of weaknesses with them. I think Lawrence North, I've been putting Lawrence North on number one on my ballot. I don't think they've played their best basketball, and talk about Attucks and their guard play. Lawrence North's guard play is really good too. And they have two guys inside, Brennan Miller and Kai McGrew, who are 6'7", 6'8". So, they don't have a lot of weaknesses either. And I don't think they've played their best basketball to date, even though they're undefeated. We'll see them next week, the county tournament, Marion County tournament. So that'll be a good challenge. They actually play Warren Central Friday too, who's really good. So that'll be a good test for them. But I would say those two, to me, consistently at this point have been the best teams. I did get a chance to see Lake Central, who's undefeated. Like their team, I'm not sure they're quite on that level, but they're definitely on that next tier of teams with a lot of the Indianapolis area teams like Attucks and some of those that Cathedral. I think Cathedral's probably in that stratosphere too. Cathedral and Westfield are the next two, I think, behind Lawrence North and Fishers. So, and possibly Attucks as well. The Cathedral is they're undefeated. They'll play in the city tournament with Attucks here in a couple weeks. So we'll get a chance to look at them a little bit closer. But, they have a couple tough tests coming up. They go down to Providence, kind of odd game. They play down there this weekend. Providence, a really good team in 2A, but
kind of a trap game, little trap game action there.
Yeah, that's I love Providence's. Their coach really good. Their team's tough. That could be a difficult game going down there. So, but yeah, I would say in 4A this year, I think there's a lot of it's somewhat parity, I would say, but also I think you've got 4 undefeated teams in our area alone. So those teams have obviously handled their business up to this point. We'll see some of those teams start to get beat. I don't think we'll see an undefeated champion like we did last year, like we did with Ben Davis. I don't think any of these teams will go undefeated necessarily, but there are some really good teams out there. And I would say at this point, I would put Fishers and Lawrence North kind of, LN 1A and Fisher's 1B, and then Cathedral and Westfield right behind them. I'm going to probably see Westfield this weekend. Haven't seen them in person yet, but they're 7-0 right now too.
If the voting were today, who would win Mr. Basketball?
I think Flory would win it. Jack Benter is probably the second guy, and he's missed some games that have been kind of those, and no fault to him. He's just had these injury things that have happened at bad times. So he missed the Hall of Fame Classic due to that ankle situation, and then missed the Santa for Sneakers for Santa thing up at Brownsburg at the start of December because he had a little bit of an injury from the night before that he didn't miss a lot of time, but he missed a chance to play on a bigger stage a little bit. Not that people don't know him, but I think those games, if he would have gone out the Hall of Fame and outplayed Flory, then we might have a better race or whatever. I think he will get a lot of votes though. But at this point, it's kind of like, well, he didn't play in those games, didn't play in the Hall of Fame. Again, no fault to him, but Flory's been consistently, and I think Flory probably had a little bit of a jump on him going into the season. So I would say, those two are probably the two that you look at the most. I think Cannon Catchings, would have been in that stratosphere too, but he left for prep school. So that obviously takes him out of it. But to me, I think you look at career and everything that goes into Mr. Basketball, I think those two probably have a little bit of a head start, and I'll take a closer look at that as we get a little bit deeper into the season. But I think, just top of my head and kind of knowing the lay of the landscape, I think those two are probably the two you look at the most.
Yeah, and like you said, you mentioned Cannon Catchings. I hate to see people like that out. Like next year, you're not going to have Jalen Harrelson considered in this because he's over at Lalu.
Unless he comes back, that's the only thing. I mean, but it is, and also for the Hall of Fame, you put Brownsburg in there thinking they're going to have Cannon Catchings, and obviously that's a draw. That's makes their team so much better, and then you don't have him, and it's like, man, and then Benner being out too, kind of, it's a little bit of a downer. So I saw some people, talking about maybe what they could do different or wait until they know what the teams are exactly. But even then, you'd have to wait until like August to announce the teams, which I don't know that that's really probably ideal. You want to get everything locked in before then. So I always told Chris May when he was at the Hall of Fame, like, try to get these teams when they're, like when Trey Lyles was playing, get him as a junior just to know for sure he's going to be there. But even in Harrelson's case, he left as a junior, so you don't even know that for sure necessarily. But yeah, I think you look at next year, and I think probably pretty likely you'll have Trent Sisley playing. Heritage Hills will be in it, and that could be a lot of fun. I think this Fishers team, even though they'll lose some good seniors, that could be a good team to have in it. I'm just throwing some names. I don't know what they're going to do, but Lawrence North will have quite a bit back, assuming people come back. So that could be a good team to have in it. So, there's a few, I can't remember who else we were talking about, but those few off the top of my head, I think would be good teams to have in there.
Yeah, you mentioned Trent Sisley. Man, he's been having a pretty daggone good season. Every time I turn around, he's going for double numbers, whether it's 30 points in 16 or whatever the case. He's piling up the points, but he's not doing it just one way. I have seen highlights of him shooting the three, of him playing inside, of him making slashing moves, passing. He has really, really expanded his entire game.
He has, yeah, and he's and that team, man. He has so much on his plate for that team. I've seen them twice this year, I think twice, and they came up here twice. So, he just has a lot to do. Guerin Catholic defended him really well. They made it tough for him, but still, he started the game. I think he had 10 points in the first quarter, right out of the gate in that one. But yeah, he's such a good player. I'd love to get down there to a home game or a game in that area just to kind of get a better, a better environment. Some of these showcase things are fun, or the holiday tournaments are fun, but you don't get the full, Hoosier atmosphere that I enjoy. I know you enjoy. So I had to get down there at some point for a home game or a game down there to get the full experience. But yeah, he's a great player. I mean, there's very little he can't do. And I just love how hard he plays, kind of like Flory. He just kind of, he just goes about his business and plays super hard. I mean, that's a thing that, we probably didn't used to talk about because you just kind of assume it, but it's I think a credit to him, how hard he plays, what a good teammate he is, and how much of a load he carries on his shoulders, because that team needs him to do a lot for him.
Absolutely. What's up next for you, sir?
Well, last night I covered a official who finished. He went to every high school in the state. He finished last night with Heron, which plays at Municipal Gardens. So I wrote that. That's on.
How many is that now? Like 350 something?
400 something. He gave me the spreadsheet. It's about 400 and something. So, but he started 26 years ago, and of course he's been to some schools that don't even exist anymore, like Arlington, right, and Broad Ripple and such. But yeah, that's up there now. That was a fun, fun to write. And I wrote about a bunch of players who impressed me over the break. That's also up this morning. And then I've got one more holiday column I'm writing for tomorrow also. So yeah, just basketball season, and got a story on Tipton I'll have out soon too. They're undefeated and playing really well. So Tipton, that team to watch in Class 2A.
They should change their name to the Tornadoes.
I like the Blue Devils, man. But yeah, Tipton Tornadoes would be good too.
Or the Tipton Elstons. He was the Tipton Tornadoes. So
there you go.
Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star. Cannot thank you enough, my friend. Make sure you were giving him a follow and be a subscriber. Thank you, sir. We appreciate you.
You bet. Thanks, Jim.
You bet. We've got lots more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Brought to you by Cheryl Sizemore and Remax Realty. If you're in the Indianapolis market looking for a home, you need Cheryl's 2 decades of experience. Could be the difference between getting the home you want or not. Reach out to her, Cheryl, at IndyHomePros.com. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Formerly. Good day, sir.
Hi. Sorry, I'm eating some granola.
I was going to say, I thought it was some cereal.
Nope, granola. How are you?
I'm just peachy, man. Cannot complain.
Didn't go to Nebraska?
No. I've made that trip, and that's a long trip, man. I cannot imagine making that trip for a basketball game, unless it was in.
Just wait until you have to go to the West Coast.
That'll be on. That's fine. That'll be on an airplane.
True. You going to go to the Rose Bowl next year? You're definitely.
Yes. Oh yes, without question. Without question. Cannot wait.
That's like the third game, right? Third or fourth game. It's early.
It is.
Third game.
After, yeah, it's
third game.
Be FIU, Western Illinois, and then UCLA on the road.
The introduction to big-time Indiana football. They win. Just Google them, baby.
What was the deal with that kid? He wanted to come back, and they said no.
Dunham? That was the deal with Dunham. That's what happened.
That's the rumor. He was in the portal. He didn't get very many good offers. He just tweeted he was coming back, and the coaches said, "You need to clear that with us."
Yeah, which does not surprise me. I mean, he's think long, think wrong kind of guy. I mean, I was like, hey, you don't need us, we don't need you.
Mm-hmm. They probably gave him a deadline and said we need to know by now, and there were some guys they probably didn't want back.
Yeah.
So
I'm surprised he wasn't able to reach out to Tom Allen or somebody at Penn State and just join that roster, even if he's not a starter or something like that.
Well, that may end up happening if they have a spot.
Yeah.
And some of IU's other coaches that went other places.
Yep. Maybe Kane Womack, reach out to him at South Alabama.
If South Alabama's a place you want to go play.
I haven't read that much, what happened to that defensive coordinator dude. What was his name? Guerreri or whatever? Or
Matt Guerreri.
Matt Guerreri.
Yeah.
I saw Chad Wiltz is going to be the next. I don't know if he's the defensive coordinator or co-defensive coordinator at Michigan State.
Really?
Or there was a report. I don't know if it's official, but I did see that this morning. All right, here we go.
Or get 0.9% APR financing for 36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to AndyMooreHonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville and Evansville. Pizza, burgers, beer. Now back to the Golf Club and Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday. Thanks a lot for being with us. We appreciate it, as always. Joined now by the great one, Rick Bozich from WDRB.com. Make sure you are getting him a follow. If you're not, you're missing out on most of your sports world. Rick, how are you, sir?
I'm good. Made a quick trip to California and back. Took some days off. And I'm ready for college basketball season to heat up. There's a few good games last night. There'll be more games of local interest tonight.
What was in California? What did I miss? Oh, the
Holiday
football
Bowl.
game?
Yeah.
Holiday Bowl, San Diego. Did you keep it classy?
I like San Diego. I wasn't there long enough. It was a fun place to be. I really like Petco Park. It's not built for football. It's a baseball stadium that they converted into a football stadium for one game a year. But I'd definitely like to go back there and see a baseball game there. It's right downtown with a really good view, very convenient, walkable from a lot of downtown hotels. Kind of a shocking result. Louisville was favored by 7.5, and Southern Cal used a bunch of backups and beat them by 2 touchdowns. So on we go.
Yeah, which brings up a question about the ACC, because there's been, much said about Florida State. They're in essence, they're leaving. It seems like, unless something happens, they're out of there. But they don't know where they would go if that were to happen. But if it does happen, that would leave the ACC in a bad way, although they would get a chunk of money from Florida State, potentially. There probably would not be the last one out the door if that's the case.
No, I would think Clemson would want to go too. I mean, Clemson views itself as an elite football school, which they have been over the last 10 or 12 years. Their culture, their whole, approach to things is similar to SEC schools in many ways. They recruit against SEC schools. So I would think that'd be a natural fit for them. But really haven't heard that much, that would lead me to believe that the SEC is ready to add 2 more schools. They're just bringing Texas and Oklahoma in next year. I'm not sure. I think there's some opposition from the University of Florida and maybe even Auburn from bringing Florida State in. And I would think South Carolina wouldn't be crazy about letting Clemson in the league. They like being the only SEC team in the state, but we'll see. I mean, I agree. I mean, Florida State has been so public about how much they don't want to be in the ACC that I'm not really sure how they can continue for very long. There's a lot of animosity there. But once those 2 go, then I could see North Carolina and Virginia and some of those schools wanting to get out. And that's where I kind of think I see North Carolina and Virginia being better fits for the Big Ten than the SEC. More of a Big Ten academic profile, more of a Big Ten fit in terms of, basketball and football, how good they are in football. Virginia would get chewed up in the SEC. But
they also were not, their football program is not exactly lighting the world on fire in either direction. So I don't know how. That? Virginia.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not. So.
And with where we're going in college athletics, that would seem to me to be the most important thing is how good is your football program? What are you going to do for us?
For sure. Yeah. North Carolina's football program is good, not great. They're never really been close to the playoff or anything like that. They've tried. They've been ambitious. They brought Mac Brown back, but he really has sort of underachieved the last couple of years. But North Carolina has such a strong brand name, and it gives you entree into an entire another state. Whoever gets in there, they don't have a team in that state from the SEC or the Big Ten. So the Big Ten really does want to stretch across the whole country, and they're already up, obviously with Rutgers towards the Northeast, but this would give them their first team in that part of the country. So who knows how it's going to turn out. I just know that Big Ten fans should be pleased that the national championship game features a current Big Ten team, a future Big Ten team, and no SEC teams.
And 2 quarterbacks that were teammates at Indiana. I sent that out yesterday. I'm like going, well, let's see. You're going to have the number 1 quarterback at Indiana and his backup playing for a national championship, along with a tight end that I think that he was there at the same time.
AJ they were. AJ Barner.
So you that's for people to say that you can't get the talent at Indiana. BS. Yes, you can. They had it. It was just a little bit of mismanagement, a little bad luck. I'm not going to blame Indiana for everything that happened to Michael Penix. I think some of that was youth, that is physically he wasn't completely ready, because some of the things were just freaked. When he hurt his knee the second time, just running out of bounds, man, that's just a freak accident. The shoulder, that was on a running play. And the first knee, hell, he was running down the middle of the field against Penn State. So just bad luck. But that last year, I'm sure he was like, I got to get the hell out of here. I'm not going to survive. But it does show you can get the talent here. And that was before all of this, the transfer portal and everything.
Yeah, I mean, what it reminded me is that those 2 years when he was there and playing well, that Indiana was a legitimate team because he's shown that he's a legitimate quarterback. When he was throwing it to Freifogel and Wap Fillier and Hendershot and all those dudes, they had a legitimate offense. And when they had Stevie Scott, they had a, presentable running game. But the offensive line was never good enough for them to sort of really take the next step forward. And then when their offensive line regressed, he did, although it's not really why he got hurt most of the time, he was under attack and he wasn't nearly as successful in his last year. As you know, starting with the Iowa game was a disaster. I went back and looked. He threw in 5 games. He had 4 touchdown passes and 7 interceptions. So, and then he sat out the last 7 games. I think we all thought that there's a good chance he was done, right? That, he might not even play anymore. And I think he's admitted since then that he thought about not doing it because he was tired of getting hit. But, it's not just – it's Penix, it's Tuttle, it's Barner, it's DeBoer. When he was the offensive coordinator at IU, gave them a tremendous advantage. William Inge is another one there. I think there's one other.
Nick Sheridan.
Nick Sheridan. Yeah, so there's 6 guys.
I have come to go back then. I really thought that Nick Sheridan was to blame for a lot of that stuff. And I'm like, looking back, I don't think it was Nick Sheridan, because they did fine when he was the OC in 2020, but it was 2021. You still had Darren Hiller, and you still had – so I don't know that it was Nick Sheridan as much as some other things going on there. But Indiana had a lot of pieces in place.
Yeah, I mean, Sheridan – the problem with Sheridan is he wasn't Kalen DeBoer, but not that many guys are. I mean, Kalen DeBoer has proven since he went to Indiana how talented he is. The problem was that, the offensive line recruiting and development and, whatever scheming, whatever it was, none of it worked. Their offensive line was just not Big Ten quality, and they paid the price for it with, Penix getting beat down, and they couldn't move the ball, couldn't win games. I think a lot of disillusionment set in across that team that year after they had such great expectations, ranked 17th to start the season. Then against Iowa, they just, weren't even competitive, and it went downhill from there. But good thing for Penix. He's showing people how good he really is. He's got great receivers at Washington. I think that's one thing. That's true, Fred. Fred must have lived in Wright Quad under 3 years.
I saw that, and I like that's the funniest thing. I'm like, oh my God, you want to talk about some trivia? Fred pointing out that he's betting Rick Bozich is the only person. Go ahead,
in
I'll
a
get
Hall
to
of
this
Fame
later.
that lived
That's
in
funny.
Wright Quad. Probably not true, because I think some IU football players lived in Wright Quad in the 50s. But anyway, it brings up the thing that Penix, for whatever reason, didn't win the Heisman. You could easily make the case that he should have won the Heisman over Jaden Daniels. And secondly, when you hear about guys being talked about for the 2024 NFL draft, you hear Caleb Williams and you hear Drake May. You don't hear much about Penix. But when I watch Penix play, he looks like an NFL quarterback to me. The way he throws the ball better than any of those other guys. Now, it is legitimately concerned.
I cannot believe the accuracy that he throws those balls with.
Ridiculous. Yeah, he throws lasers.
I'm talking 50, 60-yard passes that are just dropped into the hands of receivers. It's crazy. And he barely missed on 2 or 3 other touchdown passes, I think. So
and he's been doing it for 2 years now at Washington. You give the guy receivers and you give him time to throw, he produces. I'm sure NFL teams are anybody who's he had 3 surgeries, 1 shoulder and 2 knees. I can't keep track of it all. Whatever it is, he's had significant injuries. So that's fair to wonder about that. But if you check him out medically and you think that you can make a quarterback out of him, I would draft him. I really would. And he's even I saw a couple plays late in the Texas game where he ran the ball and designed runs and he looked okay. When he started in Indiana, he was a good runner. So
between let's say the end of the regular season when they had their 3rd consecutive close game against Washington State in the Apple Cup, which I think they have set a record now of successive games won by the least amount of total points.
Yeah.
But between that last regular season game and now, what has he done to his draft stock?
He's helped it as much as any player in the country because he's made plays that everybody's looked at and said, that dude's a pro. I mean, I've seen guys who didn't, because he plays on the West Coast and Washington, is not generally one of the big name powers in college football. I mean, they've had their moments, but they're not Alabama, Ohio State, USC, whatever. People don't watch a lot of Washington games, but I noticed on Twitter the other night were watching this dude and saying, how come this dude didn't win the Heisman? How come nobody's talking about him as an NFL quarterback? And I said, what you said is, if you watched him in Indiana, you saw he could do it then. I mean, the way he played in the 19 and 20 seasons was elite. And when he had guys that could catch the ball, like I mentioned before, Freifogel, Wap Fillier, and Peyton Hendershot, and a few other dudes. I mean, he produced, and good for him. He's traveled a tough road to get there, and I hope it works out for him.
I was up one night watching one of their games. This is probably with, 3 or 4 games to go maybe in the regular season. And Washington had been getting disrespected, not as much in the beginning when they were just pounding people, but when they got into the meat of their very difficult Pac-12 schedule, they were having some close games and people were just started to write them off. And I'm like going, anybody that does not have Washington number 1 in the country doesn't know jack about football, and which was a little over the top. And I'm like, oh, this is not going to age well. Boy, I can't wait to dig that sucker out if they beat Michigan and repost that damn thing. But they were just, no one was respecting what what Washington was able to do, their ability to just win every game, to do what it takes. You do not want the ball in their hands at the end of the game.
No, you don't, because I think they feel like they can move the ball down the field and score anytime they want to score. I don't know their names because like everybody else, I didn't watch enough Washington football, but they got their receiving core has to be as good as any receiving core in the country. Those guys catch everything around them. and they're fast, and they run good routes. I think a couple of them are going to be high NFL draft picks. So I read yesterday, I think, that the running back who got hurt on their last offensive series, his X-ray came back clean, so they think he's going to be able to play against Michigan.
That's
which
huge for them.
Yeah,
he had really become a big part of their offense.
Yeah, in the regular season, I look at he rushed for over 100 yards in 3 of their last 5 games. So he's good. Johnson, he's a transfer from Mississippi State. So, they're a legit team. I mean, I'm looking at they beat Boise, Tulsa, and Michigan State in the non-conference at Michigan State. I think they come to Bloomington next season, don't they?
They do.
Yeah.
Indiana got rid of Penn State. They don't have to worry about them, but they just have to worry about Washington instead. That's another thing. Indiana has both teams that are playing for the national championship on their schedule at home next year in Bloomington.
Right.
Not very few teams can say that unless you're probably in the Big Ten, and even then, that's going to be a small list.
Should be good for ticket sales with everything else that Kurt Signetti is doing to get people excited. You ought to be able to sell tickets.
Well, especially here of late, there was a little bit of hubbub this week when Philip Dunham announced that he was going to remove his name from the portal and return to Indiana via tweet. And then I don't know how quickly it happened, but shortly thereafter, that tweet disappeared, and there has been no comment on it since. The odds-on thinking is that you probably should have ran that by us first because there's no room at the end.
Yeah, I think they're already going to have to weed out a few guys as it is after the commitments they've gotten, and especially all the guys from James Madison. And then we know there'll be more shuffling of the roster after the second portal opening after spring practice. So, I think it's one of the most important things a new coach can do is come in and establish his culture and the way of doing things. And these are guys that we want, and these are guys that we don't watch. And, I don't know if that's what happened with Dunham, but it sure seems like, they said, we got a full flight here. It's time to move on.
Absolutely. And, he's he knows what he has his own vision. He knows what he wants, the players that he wants, needs, the coaches that he has around him, what they want. He interviewed all of the outgoing coaches, and I think talked about each and every player, had them rate each and every player from like 1 to 50 or something. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but the sheer lateness of it. I think he wants to have his roster in place and or know what he's going after. So we got lots more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat. The great one, Rick Bozich, with us, back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market for
what's the word? Xavier and Ware going to play tonight?
I thought Xavier was going to play in the last game, a little bit at least. But if he doesn't play tonight, then I'm going to be surprised. But because I think they're going to need him tonight for this game, without question. But until I see it, or
5-point underdog.
Yep, I think it's 5.5 now.
Louisville's a 15.5-point underdog. Wow.
Who to?
Virginia.
Is that
they're
at home?
still going to be without a couple dudes, aren't they?
Who? Louisville?
Yeah.
Yeah, Evans, although he doesn't do much. Trainer.
That's right, JJ Trainer.
I don't know. Virginia just got blown out by Notre Dame.
Who's probably the second worst, or maybe even the worst, who knows, in the ACC.
Yep. I don't know. Purdue beat Maryland pretty easily last night, right on the road.
Yeah, and Maryland, at least last year, they were known to be very good at protecting their home floor.
Yeah, they were.
So, I don't know if that says more about Purdue or I think it says more about how far Maryland's dropped off, honestly. I don't think they're as good as they used to be.
I mean, the other one that amazed me was that Illinois lost their best player
out of the water.
Yeah,
they're getting better.
Maybe he was a locker room problem. I mean, obviously, you saw what he was convicted of. So, I mean, I'm not saying he was, but you never know.
I don't know. You never. There's just always talent waiting to take your spot, man.
Yeah.
Where is it in Indiana?
What's that?
Where's the talent at Indiana?
I think the talent's fine. I just think the guards is the inconsistent shooting is fine.
The talent
you
at
don't
guard.
think there's talent on the roster? You don't think there's talent on his roster?
There is, but not everywhere.
At guard.
Not at guard.
I think there's talent, but there's a lack of shooting ability. Because you can be a good guard, just not a good shooting guard.
I
think here's for example, like Galloway is good at doing what he does. He will never be a good pure shooter.
Well, but you kind of need that out of a number 2 guy. You know, you need to be a shooter.
He plays more like a 1. The problem is Indiana has too many 1s. They don't have enough 2s.
The problem is the defense is ridiculous.
That's true.
Kennesaw State was the 5th team this year to set their season high in 3-point field goal makes against Indiana.
Yeah.
5th.
All right, here we go, guys.
Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by the Ugly Grouper. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday. It's actually game day for Indiana as they will travel to Lincoln, Nebraska to take on the Corey Huskers and Fred Hoiberg, who has Nebraska playing maybe the best that he's had them at his time there, Rick.
Yeah. They've had a pretty successful non-conference. I think they've lost, 2 games? One was to Creighton. I don't remember who the other one was. He's been there now, 5 or 6 years. He should finally have his dudes there. He's got a good 3-point shooting team. And as we were mentioning during the downtime, of all the issues that I see with Indiana basketball, 3-point shooting defense is the most alarming. Kennesaw State came in and made 14, whatever it was. That was the 5th team this year to set a season high in 3-point field goals made against Indiana. And if that keeps happening, they're not going to win games in the Big Ten, especially on the road.
No, and the thing is, though, they keep acting like it's not a big deal, and it is a big deal.
It is a big deal.
That's what I don't understand is
they don't act like it. Mike Woodson acts like it.
That's what I meant. It's kind of being blown off like, oh, yeah, it's BS. It is a big deal for
Indiana. Won the game was his comment, I think. We won the game.
Again, I go back to Mr. Gillespie. Daggone it. Kentucky's former
Billy
coach,
Gillespie.
Billy Gillespie. I say get up 28 points and win by 4 every time. I will never forget that statement when he said that. I was like, are you kidding me? So yeah, the inability to just make any progress there, which that's what I'm like, okay, these are mid-major teams, dude, that are just destroying you from that area. I happened to be out of town over the weekend, was able and just happened to be where in Fort Myers, Florida Gulf Coast State was hosting FAU. So I got to go to that game. And I got to see what guys knocking down 3-point shots does to a team. And, buddy, they did it. And it's something that Indiana, you're just not going to beat everybody 2-0, 2-3.
The math doesn't work. Yeah, I mean,
3 beats 2 every time.
We've said this a million times, so we'll say it 1,000,001. You either have to make the 3 or defend the 3. You can't be bad at both. You can't be a team that prefers to pound the ball inside and then let teams make 10, 12, 14 3-point shots, and you only make 3 or 4. That's not, the math is very unfavorable to you doing that. And so schematically, I don't know what it is. I don't remember it being as bad the first 2 years under Mike Woodson in terms of defending the three. But this year, for whatever reason, we saw it. Florida Gulf Coast, Army, Wright State, Auburn was another one, and then Kennesaw State have all just come in and shot the lights out. I mean, they've all made double figure. I think all of them made double figures threes against IU, and that's the biggest thing to watch tonight. Nebraska likes to take the threes, and they're a pretty good 3-point shooting team. And if that happens, they'll get the crowd, gets the crowd into it. It makes it a really difficult situation to win on the road. And maybe they'll clean it up, but haven't seen much evidence of it yet.
And I still think this is the game Indiana cannot afford to lose. It's just if you want to make the NCAA tournament, cannot lose at Nebraska. Period. End of story.
Well, they're a 5-point underdog, and all the analytics sites have them losing. I mean, the analytics sites are not very encouraging for IU. The ones that I've checked have them finishing 8-12 in the league, which means they're going to go 6-12 the rest of the way. So they're going to have to do some improving. They're ranked in the 70s or 80s in a lot of the analytics sites. So regardless of what Woodson says, when you play these games, close against Florida Gulf Coast, close against Army, close against Kennesaw State, life and death to beat Morehead State, there's a body of work there that says there's something here that needs to change and get better. Because if you're just winning the game against some of these teams, when you step up and play better competition, you're not going to be able to do that. So we'll see. Maybe they'll change some with Xavier Johnson back. I don't know. Yeah,
I don't know how much that has really affected Indiana's 3-point defensive.
System. I think it does some on defense because he's the main guy in terms of applying ball pressure when he's really engaged into doing it. And offensively, I'm not sure how much it really helps him. I think it does a little because my view on Gabe Cupps is he's in there just to sort of keep everything moving. He rarely looks at the basket. He rarely looks to be an offensive force. And, good coaches know that, and they always help off him and say, if you're going to take a shot, go ahead and take it. We don't care. Your defender is going to help somewhere else.
Yeah, Indiana, as pointed out by Royville, they have been shooting the three themselves pretty late here of late. They have really kind of found a stroke a little bit. Mackenzie Mbako got an incredible start to the last game, hitting his first 4 consecutive, and then Indiana hit 5 straight, but then that kind of went away.
Well, Mbako sat a lot because he wasn't playing any defense. Didn't he not play much at all in the second half because he wasn't guarding anybody?
For that very reason.
Yeah, I mean, that's been the way it is from the very beginning. I mean, he's not really made the progress on defense he needs to make because it's just the way it is, man. That's half the game is on defense. You can't come down and, even if you're jacking up threes, not guard your man.
Absolutely not. And that is something that is not something we haven't heard about him already prior to this season. And you would think that by now that point would be made. Obviously not, because Indiana cannot and will not win without that being the case.
Right. And Ware's going to have to play better. He had in the big games they've had this year, he really hadn't played that great. I mean, he's had some big games.
He's been shut down.
Yeah, he has. Renew's their best player. I mean, he is. I mean, he's
been their best leader.
Best leader. He's improved his game. He's out there making threes. He feels confident taking threes. He's got a go-to move on the post where he feels like he can score if you get him the ball on the block. I'm sure Big Ten teams are going to double him quite a bit. And he's going to have to prove he can do more than, go around his right shoulder and score with his left hand. I see it says Mbako was hurt. That's why he didn't get back in. I didn't know that, but my sense was
there was some, I think it's a little bit of both as to what you said, but he was on the sidelines with a pad on his knee or his thigh. I can't remember. Right. I forget that, but I think there was initially it was the lack of defense.
I'm also going to be interested to see if Woodson follows through on what he said, that Anthony Leal had played well in practice and played well in the last game and he deserved more minutes, and whether he was going to get a chance off the bench. I hope that's the case. because when he's out there, he does seem to be more engaged in team defense and talking and getting the guys to do things they need to do. And he moves the ball on offense. Now, he's still not shooting it as much as I think a lot of people hoped he'd be able to shoot it, especially as a former Mr. Basketball who was recruited as a shooter and being a fourth-year guy. But I was glad to see him get a chance and deliver. And Mike Woodson went out of his way in the press conference to compliment him.
Yeah, Todd Leary on we did the postgame show last week, and he said that in his opinion, Anthony Leal was the difference in the game for them that particular game for what he did.
Yeah, didn't they outscore him like 21-3 after Leal came in?
Yep.
Scoring is not his thing, but like I said, his thing is sort of like pulling everybody together and make everybody do what they're supposed to do, or getting them to be where they're supposed to be and things like that. So, yeah. Here's the thing. I mean, CJ Gunn has gotten plenty of opportunities. He just hasn't taken advantage of any of them yet. So why not try a different guy?
He played the least of the guys, I think, in that last game.
Yeah.
And everyone had the chance because that was a very high octane game with a lot of possessions and they needed the gas. And he played the least, which was a little surprising when you're as thin at guard as Indiana has been.
Exactly. But I'm okay with it. He's gotten plenty of opportunities this year, and there hasn't been anyone he's really like taken the opportunity and said, I need to be out here. I mean, and the coaching staff obviously sees the same thing. And, you can't get by with, 3 guards. I think you got to have 4 guards who play and contribute. And Cups is being asked to do something he's really not ready to do yet, which is to play 30 minutes a game. He should be a, 15 minutes per game guy. Yeah. Right.
Josh says, I really don't think a Big Ten road game against one of the 5 or so Big Ten teams is a must win. I'm not sure that they're that high, but the reason I say it's a must win is because they're a middle of the pack team and it's early on. You lose early. The sooner you lose, the sooner you start putting your back against the wall and your opportunities start to shrink. So that's to me why it is a win that Indiana really needs to get in their column. It's like going to Michigan. You kind of had to win that game. And yeah, I'm not saying the sky's falling if they are to lose tonight. It would be disappointing to Indiana fans, and I think that it would be a sign of this team's going to have to really buckle down. But it's going to certainly be a litmus test.
I think it's a game where you got to go in and play well, and if you win, you make shots, you play well, you play better defense. That's great. You can't go in and have the kind of performance you had against UConn or Auburn, where you're not competitive. From the way it looks today, Indiana and Nebraska are probably going to be in that middle part of the Big Ten on Selection Sunday. They'll be battling each other, to get recognition as a tournament team. So this would be a great win on their resume. It'd give them 2 Big Ten road wins, which is huge right off the bat. But I wouldn't say it's a must win. I think it'd be a very big game for them to have. And then, to me, the Ohio State game's bigger. They come home and play Ohio State on Saturday. Ohio State is ranked ahead of them. Most people consider them an NCAA tournament team. They need to beat a team like Ohio State. That'd be their best win of the year.
Absolutely. Last thing, 5 Left says the media around Indiana is gearing up to be overly critical of the team this Big Ten season. I disagree with that. I think that they deserve – this is year 3, man. You cannot have a regression in year 3. It has to be a continuous trend upward. It does not have to be a rocket, but you have to be trending upwardly in year 3. If you're regressing, you're regressing. And that's not going forward.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the criticism to me is of the roster construction. I don't think this team is very well put together. It's got a lot of quality pieces in the front court, but the back court's just not good enough. And part of that this year has been exacerbated by Xavier Johnson being hurt. Part of it is a result of Ja'Kai Newton being injured and not being available to play. But they need a guy, whether it's a guard or a small forward, who is a legit triple threat, a guy who can really shoot the ball, a guy who can really drive the ball, and a guy who can pass the ball, a guy who's late in the shot clock and things break down, give that dude the ball and he'll go get you a basket. They don't have a guy like that. And it's sort of the same like last year where it's throw it into the post and your post man's going to score, except, as good as Renew has been, he's not Trace Jackson Davis. So, and the defense hasn't been as good. I mean, the analytics don't lie. They're not ranked among one of the top 75 teams in the country. They're not.
Free throws as well has also been a problem. Rick, what's up for you next?
I'll be watching the games tonight, and Saturday, Louisville's got a home game against Pitt. I don't think I'm up to Bloomington again until the Purdue game, which is 2 weeks from last night.
We will certainly see you then, buddy. Appreciate you.
All right. Thank you.
You betcha. Rick Bozich from WDRB.com. Make sure you're giving him a follow and stand up on everything else. So we've got to get out of here. Looking forward to tomorrow. Can't wait. Thanks for each and every one of you. Without you, we have no reason to be here. Thanks to Dylan Sinn, Cal Neddenriep, and Rick Bozich, as well as John, the producer, for keeping us between the white lines. Until tomorrow, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.